Great music. Okay, here's a happy and hopeful. Here is a happy and hopeful 2021. I'm happy to see all of you here tonight. First, let me tell you about a joy that Respond to Racism received during the recent holidays. We received a $30,000 grant from the Oregon Community Foundation.
Hey.
I can see hands waving and clapping. We are so happy. It is for general operating support. And so it's our hope that we will get some programs, give some more action to some of the programs and the things that we want to do with our youth, with our general community.
Hi, I'm good.
And some organizational stuff. So I just wanted to know we have $30,000 and I am just excited. Okay.
William De La Cruz.
Can I see your keys?
My
Okay,
keys.
we have extra sounds.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Please mute your microphones.
Okay, as we begin this year, filled with hope that the events of 2020 are behind us and that things will get better. We have a vaccine for COVID-19 now, and most of us, I hope, will be vaccinated this year. I don't want to say too soon, but by the end of the year, maybe most of us, if not all of us, will be vaccinated. We'll have new leadership in the White House and actually throughout our country in many, many, many positions. So let us communicate with our elected officials. I'm not advocating for one or the other. I'm just saying, tell them what you want and tell them what we need. And it's okay for you to do it. Just know that it's not a one and done thing that you have to bug them and get the word out. Change is difficult, it takes time. But when I think about racism and the fact that it's been over 400 years, it's ridiculous and unacceptable. And for me, and the time is now for us to act. The time is now for us to see what we want, feel what we want, and go after what we want. And if you want to dismantle racism, it's not going to happen in a day. I don't want it to make it sound like you could just go out and wave a flag and it's gone. But it starts with each one of us examining ourselves, figuring out where we are with our thoughts, where are we with our actions, and what do we do? I often would say to some people, think about, your dinner table or your group that you hang out with, connect with, talk with, your book club, whatever it is. What do you talk about and who's there and who's not at the table with you? And so let's try to work on some of that this year. In 2020, race and racism rose to a new height in our country. BLM, the 3 letters, Black Lives Matter, were letters that were used and abused, spray painted, etched, printed, and uttered all over this country. Some in a good way, some in not a good way. But for some people, I think the realization that Black Lives Matter was a first because they watched that video of the murder of George Floyd. They watched that police hold his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while George Floyd called out, "I can't breathe." He called for his mother, called his mother's name. And for some reason, that visual sparked unrest all over this country. And we had the whole world watching us to see what we would do, how we would handle it. We had protests, we had things that were not part of the movement that happened that were very destructive, but we had some good things that came out of it and some good energy for people to move forward. So I'm feeling hopeful. I feel that we can do some things. I feel like we can move, and I'm looking for you to be part of that movement. But sometimes you got to do a little work. You can't just come to a Respond to Racism meeting and think that you're getting all the information you need. We're a needle in the haystack. And I'll say that again, we're a needle in the haystack. So you've got to do some work, and I'm encouraging people to take 2021, especially while you're still home for the most part, to do some reading, some research, watch some documentaries or some other shows or films, talk to some other people, get in a book group or just a discussion group, but do something that will help you expand your knowledge, help you understand what it is that we're talking about when we talk about racism, when we talk about explicit bias, or when we talk about some of the things, implicit bias. What does that mean? You know, explicit bias, I guess no, I can't just assume that people realize that that's not okay because they would speak out more. So you need to hear about what it is. Think about those conversations, the jokes that people have, things that you may have laughed about. I know in my lifetime, I've laughed about some things that I wouldn't do now. I would not laugh about them, and I would stop people from using the language or telling the stories. So these are ways that you can just stop on your own and just, you know, you don't have to get in a dangerous situation. I don't want you hurt, but I do want you to start taking that step. And so I said I was going to be brief, and I think I'm getting long-winded. So I want to stop a little bit just to say thank you to Catherine and all of her assistants and all of the kids and John for story time with the kids. Adults, you need to attend. It's at 5 o'clock, from about 5 to 5:30 or so. And you need to attend. They were talking tonight about kindness and helping one another. One act of kindness, as they learn, they could say that could brighten up a person's day. Things like it all starts with one. And one, I thought I was so touched by one of the lines in the book, the story that one of the kids was reading. One is the starting point for change. One is the starting point for change. We each are our starting point for change. And I want that to rest with you because change starts with you. When you feel it, when you see it, and when you recognize what you need to do, then you do it. So with that, I will say Happy New Year, hopeful New Year, And cheers to the new year that I look forward to seeing and hearing about your work as you interrupt racism, as you do what you can to make this world a better place. Do what you can to get to know your neighbors, get to, be able to speak to people, um, recognize the privilege that some of you have, unearned privilege, but you get it because of the tone of your skin. So we want to make sure that we are using that privilege to reach back and pull someone else up so that they're there with you. So let's work together this year, and I'm sure you will. Tonight, I'm happy to say we have a presenter, one of our own, and it's Ada A.G. Kemi. She's going to be facilitating a discussion about something some of you may have seen the news story about, but she's going to talk about how prejudice develops and why it exists. Ada is an equity and inclusion consultant, empowerment coach, and lawyer. I think she's a graduate of Columbia Law School. Did I get it right, Ada? Oh, okay. Before moving to Lake Oswego, Ada worked as a diversity professional in a global law firm. And by the way, she is a naturalized citizen. I had to add that in there, just so you would know that about Ada. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ada, I think, who's going to take us to the next step. Thank you, Ada, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you, everyone. First of all, let me just say good evening and Happy New Year. Happy 2021. I always like to take a second to just acknowledge everyone here this evening. These are difficult conversations that we have in this space. And I just want to acknowledge that you're all here voluntarily to engage in this conversation in an effort to create a better community for all of our children, for our children of color and for white children, for everyone. We all benefit when America is better. So this evening, first of all, Willie, well done. You said my name very well, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate, we practiced. We're going to talk about prejudice. We'll have a conversation about prejudice. I'm not going to be talking at you. We're going to have a conversation. We're all going to engage in this together. We'll talk about prejudice. We'll watch a video, then we'll go into breakout rooms, and then we'll return together to share learnings so that we can all benefit from our conversations. As usual, I encourage you all to use the chat box. Just if you have anything to share and there's no opportunity to say it out loud, always use the chat box. And before I move on, I want to also take a second, because we always ask you, we end the meetings by asking you to take some actions. I want to acknowledge everyone who has done some of the things that we asked you to do last month. We talked about, let me remember, writing a letter or testifying at City Council, reaching out to students of color and supporting them, attending the City Council meetings. And if you did any of these things, we're not really going to have time to talk about them. We will have a meeting where we'll review some of the actions that people have taken in support of RTR, but please, in the chat box, let us know some of the things that you've done. Thank you. Okay, so what is prejudice? We're going to talk about prejudice, as I say. What is prejudice and how does it develop into racism? The very first thing that I want to let's all acknowledge that everybody has prejudice, bias. It's prejudgment about something or someone with no basis in fact. It's just there. Everybody has it. Everybody has it. The question is, do you know what your prejudice is? And have you, and then what do you do with it? What actions, how do you interrupt it when it's detrimental? It is not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's detrimental, then how do you interrupt it? And so that really requires that you do introspection. And since we're all here, we're doing that introspection. Prejudice, when it affects behavior, then it becomes discrimination, right? And then that's when you're discriminating against other people. That's really problematic. And then racism, when people with power use their prejudice and consider a particular race to be superior to another, and then use that to get ahead and keep people down. And so that's a problem. Before we watch the video that we're going to watch, I want to take a second to talk about caste. Castes, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson is Lake Oswego's 2021 book, Elo Reed's 2021 book. I cannot recommend it enough. Isabel Wilkerson explores American history over the past 200 years. And she concludes by saying that what America has is a caste system. A caste system, it's a structural form of even more than racism, where it's fixed and embedded ranking of human beings. And a caste system can turn people who are natural allies into sworn enemies. People act against their self-interest when they belong to a caste system, because that's what their loyalty is, to a caste system. And so she examines and compares the caste systems of America, Germany, and India. So I really could not recommend this book any more highly. Please read it, or even listen to it. It's also a powerful listen. I've listened to it and I've read it. I recommend both. To start us off this evening, we're going to watch The Eye of the Storm. The Eye of the Storm is the documentary of Jane Elliott's Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise in prejudice. Jane Elliott was a third grade teacher. And after Martin Luther King's assassination, she was really looking for a way to teach her students about prejudice. She was a teacher in a small town with very few people of color, just a white small town that's reminiscent of Lake Oswego, especially back in that day. And so we're going to start by watching it. As we watch, I want you to please just keep in mind a few things that I want you to keep in mind is, can prejudice be taught? Consider, can prejudice be taught? What effect does prejudice have on members of the subordinate caste, right? And then what effect does it have on members of the superior caste, the dominant caste? And please just take note of how the children's behavior changes, because these are third grade students, and you will notice that their behaviors will change depending on where they are, whether they're superior or inferior. Please just take note of that. There's no need to, you don't need to take any notes on this, but just keep it in mind as we watch this clip. It's long, but it's so important. And so, John, if you could please take us away. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, let me apologize for the quality of the film. As poor as the quality was, it still gets the point across, and I hope that you all agree. I hope you all agree, and perhaps we can share a link if anybody is interested. So the thing that, no matter how many times I see this, the thing that I find surprising every single time is just how very quickly these children adapted, right? How very quickly, and just in the space of minutes, they understood what it means to be on top and what it means to be on the bottom, and what the behavior is that's accepted and expected. And so Isabel Wilkerson and other historians talk about how when Black people first arrived in America, they were not slaves. It just happened that it was more convenient. The needs of the colonies necessitated cheap labor, cheap, plentiful labor. And how can you justify treating your fellow human being as subhuman, right? If he's your fellow human being. And so that then comes the need for dehumanization and prejudice and the learning of prejudice. And, so think about whether prejudice can be learned and whether it can be taught. What did they need the slaves for? To work the land. And why did it have to be Black slaves? Because when they used Indian cheap labor, first of all, they could disappear because they knew the landscape, and then they didn't take to it well. And the white people that they brought over could disappear, but we Black people remain Black, right? And so easily identifiable, it was just very convenient. And so indentured servants and laborers didn't work, but Black slaves worked. Black slaves worked. And so the two questions we want you to think about when we go into the breakout rooms is, first of all, what surprised you? I've told you what surprises me each time I see it. And how did the children benefit when they were on top and when they were on bottom, right? How did they benefit? How did their behaviors change? And then also, a second question is, have you and or your family or anyone that you know, we generally ask you to think about yourself, but really we're asking you this time to consider anyone that you know. Have you, your family, or anyone that you know benefited from or suffered as a result of America's caste system, right? And we're going to put this in the chat box, and I think that John will also send it to the breakout rooms. We'd like you to consider that. And let's have the discussion. And then when we come back together, we'll share, and we encourage you to share. So I think, John, I think that we're ready to go into breakout rooms now.
No.
Okay.
Not quite yet.
Close though, 113. Wow, a lot of people stuck around.
Oh,
Yay.
good. Oh, very good. Fantastic. It's, are we all back here now?
Yes, we're probably almost all back. Yes, go ahead, Ada.
Okay. So Pat, before we do the survey, do you want to do the survey now?
No, you can go ahead and talk. We can wait for the survey. That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. First, I want to just say thank you to all the facilitators. Thank you all very much. These conversations are very helpful if there's someone to help move things along. I just wanted to mention one more thing about Isabel Wilkerson's book, something that I really, really loved about the book. Isabel Wilkerson talks about, she compares America and the West to an old house, right? She says we are the current residents of this old house. People say that, hey, I'm a new immigrant. I moved from Nigeria 40, 50 years ago. I am not a part of this history. Or I just immigrated from Ireland. My parents did not own slaves. My family did not own slaves. She says that we are the current residents of this house. When you buy an old house, right, the walls are off, things are wonky. You don't say that I didn't build it, because you're the resident. And so before you start fixing things, you have to go behind the wall to see, you contractors and construction workers and people who will know the things that you have to do to make sure that the work that you're doing to fix your old house is not destructive. You're not actually destroying the old house. And so we are the current residents of the old house, and we have a responsibility to build it. And to those people who say that, my family didn't own slaves. My family didn't own slaves. We just moved from Ireland. I'm like, last year, Here's the thing. the structure that is in place is not, when white people arrived from Europe, they came to America and they became white. Even today, you talk about when people become white. In Italy, as you all know, Italians are not white, they're Italians. In Germany, they're Germans. In England, they're English. In Scotland, they're Scottish, right? But they come to America and they become white. And I myself, I have to tell you, in Nigeria, I was Igbo, right? And then I came to America and I became Black. And so when you arrive here and you become whatever it is that you become, this is what you sign on for. If you become white, and then all of the advantages that have been reserved to white people is reserved to white people, and then you benefit from it. And if you're not sure of the ways that you benefit from it, it may be, if your family arrived at the time during the red line when it was very serious, then Black people were not allowed to get loans, were not allowed to buy homes in certain places, including Lake Oswego, couldn't live there. There was some, those are the things, while you may not have been a part of the slavery, but you benefited from the system that exists, the caste system that Isabel Wilkerson talks about. Enough talking. Pat, please, let's do the survey. And then we want to, I hope you will all just hang in for a while. Let's talk about what we talked about in the breakout rooms. So should we do the survey now?
Sure. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank thank the facilitators, especially the youth facilitators who have joined us today. Thank you so much for the work that they do to make the conversation a safe place. So we'll give you quick time to just complete our survey. That is just a private survey. You don't put your name on it, and we just used it for planning purposes and for data for our grants. So if you can please complete the survey, then we'll just give you, it only takes a minute. So for the 3 questions. Thank you.
So as you're completing
Pat,
the
it's
survey-
not on my screen.
Oh, John, I think if people are a host, then they can't do the survey.
Well,
the
I'm not a
facilitators
host and it's not on my screen either.
Oh, so John, it didn't get up for everybody?
I have it for what that's worth.
Yeah, it says 92 out of 107 have voted.
Yeah, I got it. I'm a facilitator.
Well, I never got it, but that's okay. I'm on a different device tonight, so maybe that's the problem.
Oh, maybe so. Sorry about that, Ed.
That's okay. I'm on portal device, which I think I can't chat either on this. So I won't use this again.
I'm on my regular
Okay.
computer.
Okay. Well, thank
It's
you
not
again.
here.
So Ada, you can go ahead
Okay.
now.
All right, thank you. And so thanks, Ed, for mentioning the chat. And please, I encourage you all, please use the chat box again to share whatever you learned, whatever you got, whatever you want to share with us about this discussion that we're having tonight. All right. And so let's talk about what surprised you about the film. Who wants to share what you discussed in the breakout room, what it is that surprised you? How have you benefited from or suffered as a result of the caste system that exists in this country? Do you think that a caste system does not exist in this country? That would be a good discussion too. So please, who would like to? Let me see.
In my group, in terms of what surprised us all about the film, the following observations were made. So how relevant these things are today, how elated students who were in the better group acted, how quickly they learned to act superior, how this is still happening, and how easily students are influenced.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Vera.
We had everything that Vera had as well. We also had that how much better the students did when they were in the superior group on a lesson, on a test. And then the next day it was switched. So the first day, the students with blue eyes tended to do better on the test. And then the second day, the students with brown eyes tended to do better on the test. And that was surprising to some folks in our group.
Yeah. It's really just amazing, right? In just the course of one day, the performance improved from 5.5 minutes to complete a task to completing it in 2.5 minutes. Yeah, it's amazing.
Also in our group, in addition to all of those things, a couple people said that, you know, they were also just sort of surprised that this was even done. That today, if you tried to do that in education, not a good idea. You know, that wouldn't have happened at all. So they thought that was interesting.
Right, and why is that? Does anybody, you know, I'm like, would somebody be willing to speak out about why it would not happen today?
I would say, even though I heard that there were some complaints of some parents back then, I would say today that there is a level of privilege that white parents carry when some of these things come up and threaten to sue. And so something like that would not come up because it's so controversial, even though it's a great experiment and they learned a lot. I think the parents would have just, been in denial of why this was important.
I did this exact experiment, or this exact lesson activity in 1969 in Mountain View, California, in a very upper middle class white conservative community. And we had heard about this. So a fellow teacher and I did this experiment. And it was a John Birch community actually. And we did it over a period of 2 weeks. And it was very successful. So I think we shouldn't underestimate people being able to deal with this kind of a real life experience. The parents were very enthusiastic about the experience their kids had. So, and it was during the 60s, it was 69. So of course there was all of the issue of the 60s. And all the, you know, Martin Luther King's death, and Bobby Kennedy had just died, had been killed, and so on. So there was a lot of angst around a lot of things at that time. But it was the most interesting experience I ever had as a teacher. And I think it was one of the things that students learned most about from anything I ever taught. I didn't teach for a long time, but for anything I ever taught.
Thanks for sharing, Ed. I think I understand that, Audrey, are you willing to share some of your experiences too with this experiment?
Yes, I shared that I had the great privilege as an adult to participate in this exercise with Jane Elliott. I worked for US West Direct and the US West Corporation. I think it was in like 1989, put her under contract for 2 years to, so every management employee in our company had to go to diversity training, and one half of the, I think it was a 3 or 4 day experience. And a good part of one day was this experience, and we did exactly the same, although she had changed it enough. It was blue-eyed, green-eyed, she called it. And as you signed in, you were, your eyes were examined and you were told which group you would participate in. And if you had blue or green eyes, you were assigned a green collar that you had to wear all day. And it was itchy burlap. And you went into the room, and it was her experience with the adults was the entire time was reversed. All of the brown-eyed people had taken all of the seats, or most all of them, and the rest of us had to sit on the floor or find some place to sit. And we had the opportunity to experience total reverse discrimination for half a day. And then the rest of the day was spent digesting that and talking about it and learning from it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, life-changing experience for the vast majority of us, although I would say there was certainly some level of discomfort, and I felt very privileged to work for a company who felt that type of a commitment to do that. And then I encountered her one time a few years later after I'd moved to Portland. She was the speaker on a Martin Luther King holiday at Lewis and Clark College, and talked to the college students about her work, which was at that time still continuing, and she continues to do it on some level today. She's in her late 80s, and I saw her on TV last year talking about that, and learned that she and her family suffered a lot of recrimination and in their little Iowa community afterwards. So it wasn't at the time in her community well received, but the children that participated, I've seen a film of them being interviewed as late teens or young adults, and they all admitted that was a life-changing experience for them too. So it definitely was an experience that, and the one thing I would share with as going through that, we were unprepared for what the day was going to be, and we had to commit to not share the experience with the people who would be going to later sessions. So everybody arrived and experienced that as an unexpected part of our diversity training. So it was
Thank you.
Definitely worthwhile.
Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. So I really, the thing that to think about is how easily and how quickly it is to learn these behaviors. And then what do we do about dismantling it? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see the chat box very well. And so Pat, Dawn, if there's something that you need to read out, please do read it out so that we can have this conversation. But I would like to talk a bit about the benefits of being part of the dominant caste, and the detriment, look at the other side of being on the bottom. And, I think we have just a few minutes. If we can have that conversation, I think we're going to have another meeting. We're going to have another meeting and delve into this some more. And so just in preparation for that meeting, I'd like us to talk about this now. Anybody who would like to share about the benefits or detriments of being part of a caste system, of this particular caste system in America. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. One of the benefits of being a white student was discussed in our group, and the fact that as a white student, you can get away with things that Black or BIPOC students don't get away with. So the surveillance of Black or BIPOC students is much greater. They are called to the principal's office more often for the same things that the white kids are doing.
In our group, we also talked about the fact that if you're in a favored group, your self-confidence makes you perform better, just in general, just the self-confidence, like you think you're on top of the world, and it just does affect your performance in class.
It absolutely does. In our group, we discussed at one point the fact that having something such as a religious belief, like Judaism would be something that we might still consider to be someone who belongs to a minority group, yet that's not something that you are visibly, aware of. It's not something that everyone can tell if they look at you, unless you're wearing something that indicates that you are part of that community or you identify as part of that community. It's something that is interchangeable and that you can choose to hide. So, you have the choice to be seen a certain way, whereas if someone were Black, they wouldn't have that same privilege of being able to hide the fact that they were of the minority group.
We had a discussion of somebody who was applying for a job, and the other person applying for the same job was Black, and first person got the job because they were white, essentially, and did not stand out as much as the Black person did.
Yeah, I shared the experience that when I went to high school, it was a few years after busing. And in order for me to get into pre-college courses, the counselor would not let me sign up for those courses and demanded that my mother had to come up to school to see the vice principal to even get me signed into pre-calculus, chemistry, those courses that were needed. And so I always thought about the kids whose parents couldn't come up and couldn't take off of school, off of work rather, to do that. Also, there was a National Merit Scholarship, and in January, the scholarship was to come out, and like this, the first week back at school, I remember my mother telling me, as soon as you get to school, go up and see your counselor to get that application. So I get off the bus, walk down the hallway, up the stairs. I'd ask my counselor if the scholarships were there, the applications were there. She would tell me no. And this went on for a month and a half. And my mother called down to the state office, and they said that the applications had gone out to the school the first week in January. So she was putting up these roadblocks for me to even get my high school education, to get a scholarship for college. And so those are just some of the examples of things that go on. And then also the teachers wouldn't call on you, or they would grade you lower even if you had the same answer as one of your white classmates. So those are all of the racial things that would go on. So thank you.
I want to thank you, Denise. Thank you. I want to add an anecdote that I heard today about Lake Oswego. I facilitate classes at Lewis and Clark Law School on racism at Lewis and Clark. And so I had a meeting with my co-facilitator today because classes start next week. And he no longer lives in Lake Oswego, but he told me that he used to live in Lake Oswego. And in 2018, a friend of his, or two friends of his, a Black couple, were moving to Lake Oswego, and they came to rent, they went to look at an apartment. And in 2018, they were told that there was no room at the inn. And so they left. And after they left, about 30 minutes or an hour later, the woman called on the phone. And they told her there was plenty of space, come on down. In 2018, Lake Oswego. So, yes, so please, I can't see everyone. I can't see everyone. I don't want to be talking at you. And I love this conversation. I want you to please engage with me and please share before we turn it over to Willie, because I know Willie's trying to shut us down. Where's Willie? Willie, please don't shut us down yet. Give us 10 more minutes. But so somebody please share. Jan, would you be willing to share?
Sure.
Thank you, Jan.
So one of the things I was asked to share was kind of how I got to where I am. I'm a physician, retired now, but my father came from a very poor family, and he had to quit school in 8th grade to support his family. And then he served in the Army, and he, because of the GI Bill, was able to buy a little cottage and in a nice neighborhood in Kansas City. Now that GI Bill was not available to the Black veterans. I think that a lot of Americans aren't aware of that. And this is the way families build their wealth, right? So they were able then to use that equity to buy a little tract house. And then again, in a very nice neighborhood, I got a wonderful education. I was able to get scholarships. I was able to go to college. I was able to then go to medical school. They were able to help me a little bit financially. All of this was because the GI Bill was available to my father, whereas a Black family in exactly the same circumstances would not have had that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jan. And in fact, so the other side of this is that I have a very good friend who is a Black woman, and her father was in the military. And she said to me, until we started having these discussions, she couldn't understand why they couldn't live in some of the places where other people lived. She couldn't understand why they weren't able to have a nice home, why they couldn't, her parents didn't take advantage of the things that his white colleagues took advantage of. She had no idea, because just as white people don't know, really, for the most part, Black people do not know. They understand, we all understand that there's racism, there's discrimination, there's systemic structures in place, but we don't know what it all is. Vero, I know that you will have something to say. Please do share. I don't see you, but oh, here you go.
I'm here, thank you. So no, regarding the second question, which was how did the children benefit, right? When they felt superior, is that?
No, the second question is about your family or anyone you know, your family or anyone you know. But if you want to share about the children, please do.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I apologize. That was not my understanding. But yeah, so no, I just wanted to talk about our findings in our discussion, which I found very applicable today. You know, how to identify so clearly did not take much for the students to feel superior. That generalizations of people in power can really affect a student. How feedback given can shape your behavior or your point of view. How your privilege bonded together, privilege bonded some certain students together, and they felt the need to maintain their privilege. And let's see, assimilation, making students want to assimilation made students want to resist or turn their back on their own self-identity, so that they would then be able to benefit from the privileges that the quote unquote the superior feeling group felt. And I see that every day. Right before my eyes as a teacher at Lake Ridge High School, and how just anything like words matter, and how just one simple act of a simple word of encouragement really shapes how that student goes about their academics.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Jeremy, please unmute yourself. I know that you have something in the chat. Please unmute yourself so that you can share with us, if you don't mind. Perhaps Jeremy has left us.
Yes, sorry. Okay. Sorry, it took a little while. I was just actually having to log off and go get my kids to bed.
Oh.
But did you want to ask about the book thing?
Yes, please. I know that you had something in the chat that, if you don't mind sharing with us, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to what Bruce had said about ways that we can use our privilege to help. One of the ways that happened is that at our school, there was an effort to bring more diverse multicultural books into the classroom, have parents come read them to the students. And just in this particular class, there's a group of students who are very active and very anti anything progressive or seen as part of a liberal indoctrination in their understanding. And so there's a lot of resistance that comes up.
Excuse me, Jeremy, you had said there was a group of students in the class, but did you mean the kids or the parents?
No, this is parents.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just parents. It's just, and in response to Bruce's point, I wanted to say one of the things that I think we need to do is continue to engage in that uncomfortable conflict as parents and say, no, these books are going to be here and we're going to keep fighting. But in this case, the teacher kind of got caught up in it. And I think that was very unfortunate that parents went after this teacher and tried to force her to remove their kids from the classroom if these books were going to be read out loud. And I know that the school has a policy and the principal is supportive, but it's still something where it creates conflict, and it makes it harder for this kind of stuff to happen in classrooms, even in our own Lake Oswego school district. And I'm very curious to know other ways that we should use our privilege, not just in our own school district, but in other school districts as well.
I feel like I can comment about what he just said. I think that a way that we can do our part and use our privilege is when we see these things happen, ask questions regarding race and why and if race is a fact in these sort of circumstances. Sort of not discounting the fact that just happens to everyone, regardless. I think that many times I have found myself in situations, them being today, where it would have been helpful for someone to call it out for what it was, blatant racism. And so when you're able to sort of, ask yourself, ask the people involved, ask people in power if they believe that this happened due to race. I think that would always be, in my book anyway, would be very helpful when tackling these issues, and not automatically discounting race as not being an issue in the matter.
So I hope, first I want to just thank you all for engaging in this conversation, for putting things in the chat. Please continue to do so. If there's anybody who'd like to say anything now, if you want something that you want to share, please do share. If you, we at RTR are always willing to engage in these conversations, and I myself, I'm always happy to engage in this conversation. So please do reach out. We're going to have a part 2 of this meeting. It may not be next month, but it's coming up. And so please, all of you attend, and please bring other people who would benefit from these discussions. And we'll look more into the systems, and we'll talk about redlining and other things. And so Pat, I think that I can turn it over now to Willie. What do you say?
Okay, sure. And then Willie, if you want to continue on your gratitudes before we go over the announcements, that'd be great.
Okay. I want to say, first of all, thank you to Ada for facilitating this conversation. It's amazing that film was from the 50s, and the same stuff is still happening. It's interesting, but we can be the change. I'm hopeful. I don't know if Callista is still on or not. I may have mispronounced your name, but she's a young lady from Florida that just happened to have seen the announcement about this meeting and joined us. She's a college student down there. And I thought, wow, that's great for someone else to join us, a young voice. So talking about young voices, I can't help but say thank you to Bruce Poinsett, Bruce A. Poinsett, Bruce the Younger, as people would say, and Jaden Hill, Barbara Chin, Charlotte Pence, Annabelle Jackson, and Julia Bohannon for the panel. Bruce facilitated. The other students were, the other names I called were the students who participated in the panel in December, who did an excellent job. And so I have to go, yay to the kids. They were really, really good. And I thank them so much. They spoke from their hearts, and we thank you. We thank you also from Respond to Racism for your donations. And if you want to give more, don't stop. Even though we got the grant, don't stop, because we can do bigger and better things. And let's see, I want to shout out to Terry Kramer and May Kadam for the help they did with helping me write up our piece for the grant that we got, the $30,000 grant. I'm so excited. It's so hard for me not to just start to get stuck there, and it's ways that will help. If you give me the floor, I'll keep talking. I want to talk about volunteers, though. There's a lot of work to be done, and I am looking for volunteers. You can put it in the chat privately to me, and it'll get to me. If you're interested, I want to know what you're interested in doing, what's your skill set. We need like a little of everything, okay? So if you're an organizational kind of person with real good organization skills, if you are a storyteller and you want to do some storytelling, if you're a writer and you want to do some writing, if you're a facilitator and you can think of some things that you want to do here, whatever it is that you want, if you want to just be an extra pair of hands in the mix, doing something, would you please put it in the chat? And I want to see the chat filled with people saying, you know, I think I can find an hour a week or a couple of hours a month that I can do something. Or I don't have anything to do, so I can do 5 hours every day of whatever you need. I'm only kidding there, but but if you have time and you want to help, please, 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 just put it in the chat, direct it to me, and we will gladly get you started. Okay, was I supposed to talk about anything else before I?
Nope. Thank you. And Terry has a few announcements before you close.
Okay, don't leave yet. Couple of things. So first of all, by Friday, January 15th, we as a community need to provide input to the Lake Oswego City Council because they will be doing their goal setting retreat on January 23rd. And so if there's anything you all would like to see the city address, especially of course, as it relates to racism, please go into the system. The link is here, and let the city know what you would like their goals to be. And the DEI task force did a great job of setting the stage for work that needs to be done around racism in the city. And we will have a DEI advisory board, a permanent advisory board. So that's a great start. We have a new mayor and we have some new city councilors. And so I think 2021, we're going to see change. The book for LO Reads, which we talked about tonight, will be available on January 7th. There'll be a drive-through book giveaway at the Lake Oswego Library. Just bring your library card with you and pick it up starting at 10 a.m. They have 800 copies, and when they run out, there will be no more. So I'd advise you to get there early. There will be several events around the book, as they usually do with LO Reads. Well, all of them are going to be virtual, including the keynotes addressed by the author. So just keep your eye out on the website for LO Reads for the things that will be going on. Respond to Racism will be working with the library to facilitate discussion around the showing of I Am Not Your Negro. So that will happen on February 5th, but registration isn't open yet. If you want any information on what it's like to be a school board and what the expectations are of school board members, there's a link here for a program that's going to happen on January 13th. Martin Luther King Day is coming up, and there'll be a community celebration in LO on the 17th, and there will be 3 programs that Portland State University will be putting forth. And you can go to the link here, which you guys will receive this, so you can sign up to participate in those programs. Everything's virtual, needless to say. A couple of sort of tools for any of our BIPOC community that might need racial equity support. The hotline is in the on this page. Also, if you witness or are a victim of a bias crime or a bias incident, we encourage you to report it. Without reporting, it goes unnoticed, basically, to the greater state who is trying to keep an eye on these things and take action. So the phone number and the website to report is on your screen. Our next community meeting will be Monday, February 1st at 6:30 p.m. And as Willie said earlier, I highly encourage you to attend the story time, even if you don't have kids or grandkids or or any of the above. The books are relevant to adults and insightful, and it's also pretty cute to watch the kids. I think that's everything.
We're getting out on time?
Yes, we are, Willie.
Oh, that means don't say anything else. Don't start talking. Pat, I'll let you close out and I will be quiet.
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. And please continue the conversation in the community that is very helpful in our community in building relationships and learning to be compassionate to one another. And then also make a plan on how you can be active in the community. Like Bruce is saying in the chat, knowing that our community is a blue-eyed community, what can we do? What can we do to take advantage of the privilege? So that is your task until the next meeting.
Hold on, I need one thing.
Yes. Okay, oh, go ahead then.
Please put a smile on my face for tonight and let me have some names in the chat room that says that you're willing to help out. Thank you. I'm smiling now. I want to keep on smiling. Okay, I'm finished actually, Pat.
I am too. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Oh,
thank you for
also,
coming.
before we all go, please notice that Joe Back is inviting us to tomorrow's event. New members of the City Council will be taking the oath of office. And so it's in the chat. So see you there tomorrow at 5:30.
5:30, I think is when it starts.
Yes.
And he's going to be taking the oath of office as our new mayor. And we have some new council.
Including Masin.
Where's Masin? If he's still here, he will be one of our new council people. And so we want to see our faces and our support for our, and we're going to call on them to do stuff. So this isn't just a nice hand clap and, we're happy for you. We expect you to do something. And if you don't do it, we're going to be there. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have to put my nice face back on for the night. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank
See
you,
next
John.
month.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Trina.